This episode, we take you to the northern mountains of Thailand, to Mae Hong Son, a province of winding roads and mist-covered hills. For many, it is a place of beauty and quiet retreats. But for the locals, some roads are remembered for something darker. Decades ago, two students set out on their motorbike for school, traveling along a mountain road they had taken many times before. They never arrived. Their bike was later found leaning neatly by the roadside, as if parked by hand, but the students were gone. Search parties combed the forest. No trace was ever found. Some say they were victims of crime. Others whisper that the mountain spirits called them away. Tonight, we follow their road into mystery. Mae Hong Son is a province known for its remoteness. Located along Thailand's border with Myanmar, it is a land of mountains, forests, and villages that seem to appear and disappear within the folds of the hills. The roads twist like snakes, climbing and falling through valleys where mist lingers long after the sun has risen. Travelers often describe the journey as both breathtaking and unsettling, because beauty here is always wrapped in silence. In the early 1990s, two students from a local village set out one morning as they always did. They were teenagers, riding together on a motorbike that had carried them to school countless times before. Their families waved them off, expecting to see them return at dusk, books tucked under arms, voices full of chatter about lessons and friends. But that morning was different. By mid-afternoon, teachers called their parents to ask why they had not arrived. The families began to worry. Villagers soon took to the road, retracing the path the students would have traveled. It was not long before they found the motorbike. It was upright, standing by the side of the road near a sharp bend, as though carefully parked. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no discarded belongings. The bike itself was undamaged, the keys still inside the ignition. Searches began immediately. Families, neighbors, and local police walked into the forest, calling the students names. Dogs were brought in. For days, they scoured the hillsides, riverbanks, and caves. Not a footprint, not a scrap of clothing was discovered. It was as if the two had stepped off the road and dissolved into the mist. The police could offer no clear explanation. There were no witnesses to say the students had been taken. There were no reports of suspicious vehicles. Crime seemed possible, yet nothing tangible supported the theory. The families begged for answers, but none came. As the days turned into weeks, the case became less about finding the students and more about trying to understand the road itself. Villagers began to avoid that stretch after dark. They whispered that something unseen had reached out from the forest and claimed the two teenagers. They spoke of voices that echoed in the night, calling names, as though the students were still searching for a way back. The disappearance of the two students shook Mae Hong Son deeply. In a small province where everyone knows one another, the loss of two young lives without explanation spread fear like wildfire. Parents clutched their children more tightly. Students no longer traveled alone. Teachers lit incense at school before lessons, praying for the safety of those who still made the journey. Authorities escalated their search. Police organized teams to sweep larger areas, tracing rivers and climbing higher into the mountains. Volunteers joined in, believing that with enough eyes and ears, the truth would be found. Helicopters were even brought in, circling above the dense canopy, their blades scattering the mist. But from the air, the forest looked impenetrable, a carpet of green concealing everything beneath. Rumors began to rise. Some villagers suggested the students had been kidnapped and taken across the border into Myanmar. Human trafficking was whispered, though no evidence emerged. Others claimed they had been caught in a secret deal gone wrong, although such ideas felt more like stories than truth. More frightening were the tales of the forest itself. Elders reminded people of the Fra Frai, spirits believed to dwell in the deep trees. These beings were said to dislike intruders, and those who ignored proper offerings risked being led astray forever. Some villagers insisted that if the students had strayed from the road, they may have been lured into another realm, a place where the living cannot follow. The families never gave up. Each day, they prepared food, left offerings, and burned candles at the roadside where the motorbike had been found. They prayed for the spirits to release their children, or at least to give back a sign. Yet nothing came. Not a sound, not a clue, not a body. The silence became heavier than any answer. To live without knowledge of death or survival is a burden few can bear. Mothers wept by the river. Fathers sat in silence staring into the trees. Their grief was suspended in time, for without evidence, hope could never truly die, and despair could never fully settle. The villagers began to avoid speaking of the students directly. They referred instead to the two who were taken, as though naming them might invite the same fate upon another. The road itself grew quiet. A place passed quickly, eyes lowered, hearts racing until the curve was behind them. For outsiders, the case was another line in a forgotten police file. For Mae Hong Son, it became part of its haunted landscape, as real as the mist that covers its hills. Over the years, stories about the vanished students became woven into the folklore of Mae Hong Son. Travelers passing through reported strange sensations on the very curve where the motorbike had been found. Some said the air grew colder there, even on hot afternoons. Others swore they heard faint voices, soft and distant, calling in the dialect of the hills. One driver recounted how his headlights flickered as he rounded the bend late at night. He saw what looked like two figures standing by the road, their faces pale, their school uniforms damp with mist. When he slowed to look, the figures were gone, leaving only the sound of rustling leaves. Shaken, he drove through the night without stopping until he reached the next town. Locals began to treat the site as cursed. Offerings of rice and fruit were left by the roadside, not only by families, but by strangers who had heard the tale. Monks were invited to bless the curve, chanting prayers and sprinkling holy water. Yet even they admitted the air there felt heavy, as though something lingered just beyond sight. Children were warned never to wander too far into the forest. Parents told them the students were still walking inside, trapped in a world of fog, unable to find their way back. Some said if you listened carefully at dawn, you could hear footsteps moving just beyond the tree line, always pacing, never arriving. For investigators, the story was unfinished. The motorbike was the only piece of evidence, but it told no story. No signs of forced entry, no broken metal, no skid marks. It was as though the students had calmly stopped, stepped away, and disappeared. The neatness of it unsettled everyone. Crimes often leave scars on the earth, but here, the ground was untouched. The case fell into silence. Files were shelved. Journalists stopped asking. The forest reclaimed the search paths, vines covering the trails left by desperate feet. But the villagers never forgot. Each time mist curled low over the hills, they thought of the students who vanished and the mystery that refused to be solved. Today, decades later, the story of the vanishing students still lingers in Mae Hong Son. Travelers speed along the mountain roads, marveling at the beauty, unaware of the silence that hangs over certain bends. The forest is as dense as ever, the mist as thick, and the memories as sharp for those who lived through it. The families never found closure. No bodies were recovered. No belongings were returned. Some moved away, unable to live beside the road that had taken so much. Others remained, lighting candles at anniversaries, whispering the students' names into the night in hopes the sound would reach wherever they had gone. The road itself has become a kind of shrine. Truck drivers honk their horns when passing, a sign of respect for the unseen. Motorists sometimes leave small offerings at the bend, flowers tied to guardrails, food set upon the ground. Even outsiders who hear the story feel compelled to pay tribute, as though acknowledging the mystery is the only way to pass safely. Folklorists speak of liminal places, spaces where the line between worlds is thinner. For Mae Hong Son, that mountain road is one such place. Some believe the students were victims of crime, taken by hands unseen, hidden where no one could ever find them. Others believe the spirits of the forest claimed them, their souls wandering still, waiting for prayers to guide them home. What is certain is the effect it left on those who remain. Fear still clings to that stretch of road. Even now, villagers say if you walk there at dawn or dusk, you might hear laughter in the mist, the kind that comes from teenagers on their way to school. But when you turn, no one is there. The mystery is unsolved, but it is also alive. Each retelling gives it new breath. Each candle lit by the roadside is another acknowledgement that 2 young lives vanished without reason. For Mae Hong Son, it is not only a tragedy, but a reminder that in places where the forest meets the road, the living are never alone. And so the road waits for answers that may never come, for travelers who may hear whispers in the mist, for the possibility that one day someone might discover the truth. Until then, the students remain part of the mountain's story, shadows woven into the fog, footsteps fading yet never gone.